Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar. Happy Halloween to everyone. I thought it was appropriate today to have a little fun on the webinar. So as you can see, hopefully you can see, I will be performing this webinar as Batman. Obviously, anytime you have an opportunity to be Batman, you take it. So I'm taking that opportunity today to provide this webinar. So hopefully it'll be somewhat educational and a little bit of fun. Again, I appreciate everybody for joining and look to get started here. So a little bit about me. My name is Brian Lachlan, for those of you who don't know me. I've been with Intellis Solutions for the last 14-ish years. Intellis Solutions is a full-service IT consulting company out of the DC metro area. And we've been providing solutions for our clients for over 20 years. We're actually going into our 21st year. No, yeah, 21st year. So things are changing a little bit in the IT industry and the security industry overall. It used to be a lot easier to spot criminals. It used to be a lot easier to be able to identify who's robbing who, who's attacking who, that sort of thing. That's changed recently, and it's caused a lot of confusion and frustration and a lot of lost money in the industry. Over the last 12 months, over 91% of organizations suffered some sort of cyber attack. And that there's a lot of different ways that happens. I'll go through some of those, but a lot of them are in the case of viruses or ransomware. Some people on this call may have even been the victim of that at some time. So it's really a big challenge in the IT industry for us to identify new ways to prevent and improve our ability to respond to such instances. So in 2017, all of these organizations were attacked and had some sort of data breach over the last year. So as you can see, some pretty big names on here. A lot of those attacks also had some pretty significant impact, not only on the organization itself, but on its clients or its users, its customers. In 2016, reported data breaches actually increased from the year before by over 40%. So Yahoo had that big data breach. It was the largest in history last year, and it affected over 1 billion accounts. So going into 2017, people were concerned, hey, is this going to increase? Is it going to stay the same? Well, it actually has increased. So obviously some of these big names on here and caused a lot of issues and challenges. One is with FAFSA, which is the IRS data retrieval tool. So on April 6th, in 2017, the IRS revealed that up to 100,000 taxpayers may have had their personal information stolen in a scheme involving this data retrieval tool that they had, which they used to complete free applications for federal student aid, which is what FAFSA does. They identified at that point and since that somewhere around 8,000 fraudulent returns were filed, processed, and returns issued, costing over $30 million. So obviously an example, and that's with a government entity. Companies like Chipotle, Gmail, all have had significant ones. Obviously, DocuSign and Equifax have been more recent ones that have been huge news stories semi-recently. However, a lot of small, medium-sized businesses are now becoming bigger targets. And my office just went dark. Hold on 1 second. Crap, I have to turn the lights. And I'm back. So small, medium-sized businesses are becoming much more of a target, and it's caused organizations like ourselves to have to focus on providing a high level of security, high level of awareness to our clients for a lot lower budget than has been traditionally there. Some of the focus areas in terms of these breaches, these attacks are around stealing information. So actually getting data and being able to use that data or turn it over or sell it to cyber criminals. Wiping data and actually destroying information within the network, actually stealing money, transferring money in some fashion, or actually just damaging the overall company's reputation. Some people just want to watch the world burn, as was from a nice Batman quote. And obviously, otherwise, financial losses are a big key factor. One type of attack is phishing, and that was actually the focus of an attack and a data breach on Gmail semi-recently over the last year, where they were being used by a third party to try and do an attack, a phishing attack on Gmail itself. So you can see the stats here, very, very big in terms of how people are basically reaching out to individuals and companies and trying to get them to put their personal information into a site. That way they can get their personal information or financial information and be able to make transactions or do things illegally. So phishing, it continues to be up. It's no longer just the kind of, hey, we have a Nigerian prince that's trying to come over, just give us your bank account information, and then we'll pay you millions of dollars on the back end. These attacks are getting much more smart. There aren't the misspellings that there used to be. There aren't those types of things. They are much more intelligent, much more targeted, and much more impressive. So we have been working with a number of partners and products that can help actually train your staff to be able to prevent these types of attacks from happening, or at least minimize the risk. Otherwise, ransomware is still a huge, huge issue. So CryptoLocker is the big name one. There's been a number of attacks over the last couple months, but essentially people sending you or somehow infecting your computer with ransomware malware or virus, and being able to then encrypt whatever files they have access to. They then require a ransom for unencrypting those files. Unfortunately, if not blocked or prevented, there are a lot of challenges in terms of what access that user may have had and the files that they've encrypted. So that encryption can go not only on personal files, but it can go to network files. It can go to, if they have server access, it can go to files they have connected to SharePoint, and cause a lot of issue there. So we have a number of strategies that we'll talk through in terms of preventing that moving forward. And of course, Joker's somewhat involved in that situation. You can see the top infected countries with the CryptoLocker virus, US being the #1 target around the world, biggest target and easiest one to go after. And so obviously the industry's changed in that area to try and prevent that from happening again. You can also see some of the other attacks that are going on. This is a kind of a live, if you ever have an opportunity to and you want to go to ipviking.com or map.ipviking.com, you can see in real time the actual attacks that are happening. Those are all sorts of attacks. I think this is botnet related attacks specifically. And you can basically see what appears to be kind of World War III in terms of nuclear weapons being fired back and forth. But essentially what it does is it tries to map out on a live feed kind of what attacks are being identified and what countries they're coming from. And you'll see many of them are from China, the US, and I'll say Soviet Union or former Soviet Union areas. You can see kind of who's kind of attacking who and where that's going to. So if you ever want to see something that looks kind of cool, I recommend going over there. But you can see how active these types of attacks are. So what are companies doing to try to prevent this kind of thing from happening? So 69% of senior executives said that digital transformation is forcing fundamental changes in their security strategies. Almost every company that I've worked with over the last year has made security one of its highest priorities, whether that's because it is being pushed down from a compliancy perspective, or if that's being actually identified based on the risks that are out there. I think it's a combination of both. NIST compliance that is coming out or has come out as being required for government contractors by the end of the year, PCI compliance requirements, those types of things are all causing organizations to start really focusing on security as a major area they need to focus on. Most companies are looking to actually spend more on protecting their security threats over the next year. Also, there's the response capability area. So not only are you trying to prevent these attacks from happening, and you're trying to mitigate the impact they have on your organization, but also enhancing your ability to identify and respond to actual incidents that do occur. It's a major focal point in the security area currently. Also, another, I'd say, point is the cultural aspect of the security side of things. It's not just an IT-related type of topic. Nearly half of enterprises are combining security and operations personnel into teams for fortifying mission-critical applications. And I'll speak a little bit more about the kind of cultural changes and restructuring that's happening in many companies around security. So a Forbes, there's a Forbes survey and study that actually came out earlier this year that interviewed a number of business executives, and this is the response they got regarding how they're planning to protect mission critical resources excuse me, over the next year. The highest rating was devoting more personnel and technology to ensuring that your systems are never actually breached. Next highest was around combining the security and operations personnel, as I mentioned in the previous slide. The third being focusing on basically new investment in specific areas around security, and the lowest being the line of business and development teams increasing their roles in protecting critical assets. So focusing a little bit more on that security and kind of a multi-layer approach to providing that security, it's no longer just putting up physical security measures within your office. Oftentimes, most organizations at this point have cloud resources out there, and how do you make sure you're not only protecting the resources you have within your building, but from a security perspective, but also the resources you have outside of that in these other applications you have. And so breaking down into the different areas, you do have your physical security, so making sure you have your access to your resources, your office, your PCs, your servers, your network, actually physically kind of protected. Making sure you have the appropriate measures of authentication. I'll talk about multi-factor authentication in a little bit as well. But making sure you have the appropriate authentication mechanisms to get into your office, into your network, and that sort of thing. You also have the actual logical side of things around threat management, making sure you're able to actually scan for and identify threats. A lot of the attacks that I had mentioned previously, the biggest problem was it wasn't identified. And so whatever malicious activity was happening for a long time before it was identified. Many of those attacks, they don't know what the impact was, and they don't know who did it. But because by the time they identified it, so much activity had already happened. So making sure you can scan, identify threats, and respond appropriately as quickly as possible. On the data element side, making sure that the actual data is encrypted. So even if you can break through those first several layers of security, being able to make sure that the data itself is protected. And that can be from a laptop perspective, that can be from a server perspective. We're working with a lot of organizations these days in figuring out the best, quickest, easiest ways to encrypt the data, to make sure that it's secure, and in the instance that, either someone leaves a laptop on a train, or something, their car gets broken into, or God forbid someone walks out with a hard drive from their server room, we are protected at that layer as well. And then also implementing different administration tools. We have been working on a security suite here at Intellis that is a combination of a number of products and partnerships that will provide a full suite of administrative tools that would allow us and you as an administrator of your network to be able to take action and do a better job of administration from a security perspective. Again, some of the compliance things that have come out recently obviously are pretty significant. They have a pretty significant impact on a number of the industries with clients who we work with, especially, like I said, the NIST areas and around anything government focused. That's starting to be enforced much more. HIPAA is coming out with a lot of new security requirements. Again, I mentioned PCI compliance as well. Another big area is locking down your remote access solution. Most of our clients have a secure remote access solution, but enhancing it with in other ways as well by incorporating multi-factor authentication. That can be through not only the remote access tool, but also through the other applications that the organization uses. So there's a lot of really, I'll say, inexpensive but very good quality products out there, including using Microsoft Azure's security services to be able to implement multi-factor authentication not only within the Azure or Office 365 environment, but also with other applications that you can connect the portal to. Other areas where we get some, I'll say, significant bang for your buck is actually implementing that multi-factor authentication with your mobile devices. So depending on how you want to actually implement it, whether you use Azure or whether you use another product, we have the capability to be able to drive that down to the mobile device. Some other areas, as I kind of previously alluded to, were around user training and awareness. One of the tools within our security suite that I mentioned is an actual tool that allows us to run our own, I'll say, fake phishing attack on your users to see what they are going to or what they will click on. So we will actually send multiple campaigns during a month or during an overall time period to your users to see which users are educated and which aren't. We then have the reporting to then go back to those users, set up training and awareness programs with your user base so that to educate them on when they do get these types of attacks, if something is to slip through, they have the ability and the awareness to communicate that and to avoid infecting your network. We also, obviously, we're pushing hardcore a lot of the policy and access controls down to your users to make sure that you are protected whether you're inside the office or out. In the past, there's been some challenges around supporting clients or users who are not always in the office and not always checking in. and that has changed. Our tool set has been enhanced and now has a much more of a capability to be able to support and protect all of your users and all your servers and all the mobile devices, whether they're inside the office or outside the office. They can be completely managed in other ways outside of just group policy like we've done in the past. Some other areas to focus on, which seem to be in some ways, just simple ideas, but making sure we are up to date with malware detection, making sure that the perimeter defenses are out there. So we have email filtering, we have our web filtering. So if users do click on something they shouldn't be going to, we're making sure we're protecting ourselves. Making sure, of course, at all times having timely backups, and that can be and should be not only on the server level, but also on the PC level where appropriate. That also should be in your cloud program. So many people think Office 365 is being backed up, is being supported by Microsoft, so we don't have to worry about it. Well, it is being backed up. It is being managed by Microsoft or supported by Microsoft. However, there are some risks associated with situations where files can get encrypted, files can get damaged, we can have file corruption, or in the case that a user deletes an email from a long time ago, after a certain amount of time, Office 365, Exchange Online, purges that information. Same thing with SharePoint, OneDrive, all those types of tools. So what we recommend is making sure we not only have backups at the server level, the PC level, the virtual machine level, but also at the Office 365 level, where we can make sure we can restore items that have been corrupted or items that have had issues. We work with a number of different product suites that can provide that functionality. Additionally, making sure we can push down and manage any of the data that's on your mobile devices. There's a number of really good mobile device management tools that we have employed and work with our clients on. And depending on your needs, there are a lot of options on how to do that, whether they're in a bring your own device scenario or whether they're in an actual company issued mobile device policy topology. So we have the capability to manage kind of all of those, but we do highly recommend that. We have different flavors, we have different ways of doing it, and we have different strategies depending on what your needs are. And making sure we are able to do the things we need to do to protect the organization, obviously, is the biggest key there. And like I said, we have a number of products that allow us to do that. So with that, I just thought this was hilarious, so I wanted to post it. I want you guys to be educated on security, and the goal of this was to kind of, I'll say, wet your whistle and give you a little flavor of some of the things that are out there today. But I do want to encourage you to reach out to your account manager if you're a current client, or reach out to us in general for us to help you and provide a free security assessment of your organization to just see how healthy you are and where you stand from a security perspective. I don't want you guys to be the victim of an attack and then be able to realize the importance and the risks that are really out there from a security perspective. I do want to leave you with just a kind of an overall summary of some of the things we talked about, but really in the day we live in right now, making sure we're not only just having antivirus on our computers and that's going to protect us. Really creating a modern cybersecurity strategy backed by a solid business model is extremely important, and reevaluating that strategy over and over again. Making sure we're reevaluating and focusing on efforts to secure all your mission critical assets is so important. Really looking at new ways to identify and report on any potential breaches is not only important, but is also required in a lot of the agreements and compliance requirements that are out there and that are going into effect, whether that be through some of your partnership models, or again, some of the actual compliance that's being pushed down through the government. Not only are these very, very important, but they're going to be required, and something that in the case that there is a breach, there is a requirement to be able to identify and report it to these other authorities within a certain amount of time, 72 hours or 48 hours, whatever it may be. And that way, you can actually be held financially accountable to the effects of some of these breaches. Developing a company-wide culture around security. Again, training your staff on what is security, what to be aware of, what to focus on, what to avoid, and how to report incidents is so important. And also, again, not just safeguarding the applications themselves, not just preventing access into an application from a networking perspective, but actually making sure we're securing the data itself. So through that encryption, through that backup, and making sure that at that data level there is the security there to make sure you're preventing a really negative event. So that's all I had for you guys today. I appreciate the time. I hope you're able to have some fun here. This is my contact information. I do encourage you to reach out to me directly at any time. And I look forward to speaking with you at sometime soon. Again, I appreciate all the time. And I did want to leave you with a couple of kind of funny things I found online that I thought were pretty hilarious. So for those of you who are not only superhero fans, but Game of Thrones fans, that definitely was Joffrey in the original, well, not the original, but in Batman Begins, that Batman talks to. And then just the picturing of Batman singing Lady Gaga just makes me laugh. Hopefully it made you laugh too. You can follow us on social media. These are our accounts. I encourage you to do that. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over for any questions that you may have that I can address, or Batman can address. Well, thank you guys very much for coming to our webinar today. Happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you have a great, happy, and safe day.